What happens when a man, blinded by greed, forces his pregnant wife to rock bottom? Julian Hayes, a millionaire with a dark secret, thought his quiet, simple wife, Ilara, was an orphan with nothing. He let his cruel mistress, Chloe, humiliate her, mock her, and even grind a stiletto heel onto her hand while she was 9 months pregnant. He told her she was worthless. But Julian made one fatal mistake. He didn't just break a poor, helpless woman. He broke Ilara Sterling, and he was about to find out that his pregnant, abandoned wife had 3 brothers, 3 billionaire CEO brothers, and they just landed. The apartment was small, not in a charming, cozy way, but in a cramped, walls-closing-in way. It was on the 5th floor of a walk-up in a less than fashionable part of the city. The linoleum in the kitchen was peeling, and the persistent drip of the bathroom faucet was a sound Ilara Hayes had come to associate with her new life. She was also 9 months pregnant. Ilara wiped a sheen of sweat from her forehead, her hand trembling slightly as she braced herself against the cheap laminate countertop. Her back ached, a low, constant throb that pregnancy books assured her was normal. What didn't feel normal was the knot of anxiety in her stomach, a feeling that had been growing for months. Her husband, Julian Hayes, was a self-made man, as he so often reminded her. He was, by all accounts, a rising star in the tech finance world. He was handsome, charismatic, and driven. When Ilara had first met him, she'd been charmed by his ambition. He was nothing like the men she'd grown up around, men who had inherited the world. Julian was building his. That's why she'd never told him the truth. She had met him at a charity fundraiser she'd attended, under an assumed name, volunteering as a server. She was tired of the gilded cage of her own life, of men who only saw sterling and the dollar signs that followed. Julian had seen her. He'd loved her, he'd said, for her simplicity, her kindness, her lack of pretense. And so, Ilara, the youngest child and only daughter of the Sterling dynasty, had let him believe she was just Ilara, an orphan with a small trust fund that had long since run out. She had embraced this life. She'd learned to budget, to shop for sales, to cook his meals, and to clean their tiny apartment. She believed they were building something together, sacrificing now for a future he was working so hard to secure. Lately, however, the sacrifice felt one-sided. Julian had become distant, his nights filled with investor dinners and strategy sessions that stretched into the early hours. He'd snap at her if the apartment was too messy or if dinner wasn't on the table the moment he walked in. His suits, however, were getting more expensive. He'd switched from a mid-range sedan to a leased Mercedes, which he parked in a private garage 3 blocks away. "It's all about appearances, Ellie," he'd explained, kissing her forehead. "We have to look the part to win the game. This big deal I'm working on, it's everything. Once it closes, I'll buy you the world." She wanted to believe him. She needed to. The sound of a key in the lock jolted her. Julian was home, and it was early. "Ilara," he called out. His voice was bright, but it held a false, strained quality. "In the kitchen, Julian," she said, trying to smile as he entered. He looked impeccable, his dark hair perfectly styled, his suit a sharp navy blue. He didn't come alone. Behind him was a woman. She was tall, impossibly slender, and poured into a crimson dress that probably cost more than their apartment's rent for a year. Her blonde hair was a cascade of perfect waves, and her lips, painted the same shade as her dress, were curved in a faint, bored smirk. She was wearing Chanel, and she smelled of Baccarat Rouge 540. "Julian, who?" Ilara began, instinctively wiping her hands on her maternity apron. "Ilara, darling, this is Chloe Vanderbilt," Julian said, stepping aside. He was rubbing his hands together nervously. Chloe she's the key stakeholder in the new venture. She wanted to see where I come from. My humble beginnings. Chloe's eyes, a cold, piercing blue, swept the tiny apartment. Her gaze lingered on the peeling linoleum, the second-hand sofa, and finally, on Ilara's swollen belly and simple cotton dress. A look of profound, undisguised disgust crossed her features. "This is it?" Chloe's voice was a high, breathy drawl. "My God, Julian, you weren't kidding. It's authentic." Ilara felt a hot flush of shame. "It's not much," she said, forcing a smile, "but it's home. Can I get you something? Water? I think we have some tea." Chloe laughed, a sound like tiny, tinkling bells. "Tea? In that? No, thank you. I might catch something." She turned to Julian, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his chest. "You really are a marvel, Jay. To think you climb 5 flights of stairs to this every night. And with her." Julian's smile was tight. He looked at Ilara, and for a second she saw something ugly in his eyes. Not pity, but resentment. "Chloe, be nice," he said, but there was no force behind it. "Oh, I am," Chloe purred. "I'm just impressed. And you?" she said, turning back to Ilara. "You must be exhausted. Growing a little air." She tapped a long, red nail against her chin. "Tell me, darling, are you sure it's Julian's? He's usually so meticulous." Ilara's breath hitched. What?" "Chloe," Julian warned, his voice low. "What? It's a valid question." Chloe walked closer to Ilara, circling her like a predator. "You just don't seem his type. He's all about quality. And you look like you were a bargain." From the clearance rack. Tears pricked Ilara's eyes. This was her home. This was her husband. "Julian," she whispered, looking to him for defense. "Tell her to stop." Julian sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Ilara, don't be so sensitive. Chloe she has a very direct sense of humor. She's an investor. We need her. We need her." The words echoed in the tiny, silent kitchen. He wasn't defending his wife. He was managing his asset. "Right," Ilara said, her voice hollow. "An investor." "Exactly," Chloe said, retrieving a sleek, black vape from her tiny purse. "And I'm investing a lot of money into Julian. I need to know his liabilities. And frankly, darling, a pregnant, penniless wife in a dump like this, it's a huge liability." Chloe took a long drag, blowing a cloud of sweet-smelling vapor towards the ceiling. "But don't you worry your pretty little head," she cooed, walking to the door. "I'm here now. I'm going to take very good care of Julian. We're going to be closing this deal. All night." She looped her arm through Julian's. "Come on, Jay. This place smells like poverty and cabbage. Let's go back to my place." Julian looked at Ilara, his face a mask of false apology. "Business, Ellie. You understand. Don't wait up." He didn't even say goodbye. He just left. Ilara stood alone in the kitchen, the high, sharp scent of baccarat rouge mingling with the smell of the simple stew she'd been simmering for his dinner. The faucet dripped. Drip, drip, drip. And for the first time, Ilara Sterling Hayes allowed herself to feel a sliver of cold, terrifying fear. For 3 days, Ilara lived in a fog of confusion and dread. Julian didn't come home. His texts were brief, clinical. Meeting ran late. Working on the server integration? Stop worrying, it's fine. It wasn't fine. On the 4th day, a black town car, the kind she hadn't ridden in since she'd left her old life, parked outside her building. The driver, a man in a crisp suit, knocked on her door. "Mrs. Hayes?" Mr. Hayes has sent me for you. He has a surprise. A surprise. Relief warred with suspicion. Maybe Chloe had just been a test, a horrible, cruel test. Maybe this was the big deal closing, and he was finally bringing her into his real life. Hope, stubborn and painful, bloomed in her chest. She allowed the driver to take her small, packed overnight bag. She'd packed it just in case. The baby came and helped her down the 5 flights of stairs. The car didn't drive to his office building. It drove to the most exclusive part of the city, to a towering glass obelisk on Park Avenue that she had only ever seen in magazines. The lobby was a cavern of Italian marble and abstract art. The doorman, dressed like a 4-star general, nodded as she entered. "The penthouse, Mrs. Hayes. Mr. Hayes is expecting you." The private elevator ascended with whisper-quiet efficiency. When the doors opened, they opened directly into the apartment. Elara stepped out, and her world tilted. It was magnificent. A duplex penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a 360-degree view of the city. The furniture was sleek, minimalist, and looked impossibly expensive. A spiral staircase corkscrewed up to a 2nd level. This was not the apartment of a man sacrificing for the future. This was the apartment of a man who had already arrived. "Julian," she called out, her voice trembling. "In here, darling." His voice came from the main living area. She walked across a rug that felt like walking on a cloud, her cheap flats sinking into the plush wool. Julian was standing by the window, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He was wearing a silk robe, and he wasn't alone. Chloe Vanderbilt was lounging on a massive cream-colored sofa, her feet propped up on a marble coffee table. She was wearing an even more expensive silk robe, a matching black one. "There she is," Chloe trilled, raising her own glass. "Welcome to our home, darling. What do you think? Julian has such good taste, doesn't he?" Elara stopped, the overnight bag slipping from her hand. "Julian, what is this? I don't understand." "It's simple, Elara," Julian said, his voice flat, devoid of the warmth she'd once loved. He gestured around the room. "This is my life. The real one, the little apartment, the struggle. That was a test to see if you were loyal, to see if you'd be a good, quiet, supportive wife." A test? And you passed, sort of," Chloe interjected, sitting up. "You were very good at scrubbing floors. A natural, really." "Chloe is my partner, Elara," Julian said, walking toward her. "In every sense of the word. She's the one who funded my company. That whole investor thing, that was me being kind." Elara's legs felt weak. "Funded? So, the money, it's hers." "Ours, darling," Chloe corrected. "And now that the company is about to merge, thanks to a very big deal I've secured, we're cashing out. We're moving to Switzerland. And Julian, well, he can't exactly bring a pregnant, frumpy wife from the slums, can he? It's bad for the brand." Elara's hand went to her belly. The baby kicked, a hard, sudden jab. "Julian, look at me. I am your wife. I am carrying your child." "A child I'm not even sure I want anymore," Julian said, his face cold. "It complicates the financials. It's messy." "Messy," Chloe agreed. "But we're not monsters." She stood and glided over to a beautiful mahogany desk. "Julian has drawn up papers. A divorce settlement. He's being very, very generous." She held out a stack of documents. Elara just stared at her. "He'll give you $50,000, Chloe said. "Enough for you and the thing to disappear. Go back to whatever hovel you crawled out of. All you have to do is sign, waive all rights to his future earnings, and agree to a non-disclosure agreement." $50,000, Elara whispered. It was nothing. It was an insult. "Take it," Julian urged. "It's more than you're worth. You were a good little experiment, Elara, but the experiment is over. Just then, the elevator doors opened again. An older woman, rail-thin and dressed in a severe grey suit, swept in. She had Julian's eyes and Chloe's sneer. "Julian, honestly," the woman snapped. "The car has been waiting. We have the gala. Is this still here?" "Mother," Julian said, his tone suddenly deferential. "This is Elara. I was just handling it." Meredith Hayes looked Elara up and down, her lip curling. "Good God, Julian, you actually touched it? It's even worse than you described. Get her to sign and get her out. The Vanderbilts will be at the gala. We can't have this creature lingering." "She's being difficult, Meredith," Chloe complained, pouting. "She doesn't want the money." "Then she gets nothing," Meredith said. "Sign the papers, girl." Elara was shaking, her vision blurring. This was a nightmare. This was not real. "I won't," Elara said, her voice finding a sliver of strength. "I won't sign." "Wrong answer," Chloe sighed. She casually tossed the stack of papers onto the floor. The pages scattered across the marble. "Oh dear. How clumsy. Julian, your wife is a terrible hostess. She hasn't even offered to pick up my mess." Julian looked at Elara. "Pick them up." "What? You heard me. Get on your knees and pick up the papers, Elara. Show my mother and Chloe that you can at least be useful." "Julian, no. I'm pregnant. I can't." "I said pick them up," he roared, his face turning purple. Tears streamed down Elara's face. She looked at Julian, her husband, the man she loved. She saw a stranger, a monster. She looked at his mother, who was watching with cold amusement. Slowly, painfully, Elara bent down. Her belly was a massive, taut drum, making the movement agonizing. She knelt on the cold marble, her hands shaking, and began to gather the scattered pages. She reached for the final page, the signature line, a high-heeled shoe, a crimson Christian Louboutin stiletto, slammed down onto her hand, pinning it to the floor. Elara screamed. Chloe Vanderbilt leaned over her, putting her full weight onto the heel. The sharp point dug into the delicate bones of Elara's hand. "You know, Elara," Chloe whispered, her voice a sickly sweet poison. "I've always wondered what it would feel like to step on someone so beneath me. You're like a little bug, and I hate bugs." "Stop, please, you're hurting me," Elara cried, trying to pull her hand back. "Shut up," Julian snapped. "You're embarrassing me." "Sign the papers, Elara," Chloe cooed, grinding the heel harder, "or I'll break every bone in your filthy hand. Then I'll break the other one." A sharp, searing pain, entirely different from the one in her hand, shot through Elara's abdomen. A contraction, hard and terrifying. "Ah!" she gasped, clutching her belly with her free hand. "The baby! Julian, the baby! It's coming!" Chloe laughed. "Oh, how dramatic. Right on cue. You're pathetic." Julian just rolled his eyes. "Stop making a scene, Elara. It's a Braxton Hicks. You're not due for 2 weeks." He looked at his watch. "Chloe, Meredith, we're late for the gala. Let's go." "But Julian—" Elara wept, still on the floor. He stepped right over her, adjusting his cufflinks. "Driver will be back for you in an hour. If you're not gone by then, I'll have security remove you, and you'll get nothing. Do you understand me?" He didn't wait for an answer. He, Chloe, and his mother walked to the elevator, their laughter echoing in the vast, empty penthouse. The doors chimed shut. Elara was left alone, kneeling on the cold marble, her hand bleeding, her body gripped by the undeniable, terrifying rhythm of premature labor. The silence in the penthouse was absolute. It was a suffocating, soundproofed void, a stark contrast to the sirens and street noise of her old apartment. Elara lay on the floor for several minutes, a broken heap, the pain in her hand a sharp counterpoint to the blooming, tidal wave of her contractions. They were 5 minutes apart. This wasn't a scene. This was real. Her baby was coming, and she was alone, bleeding, in a rich monster's palace. Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to swallow her. She had no one. She had chosen this. She had run from her family, from her name, to be normal. She had built a life on a lie, and in return, her husband had built his on a foundation of pure, sociopathic greed. She crawled, sobbing, to the overnight bag the driver had dropped. Her phone, her cheap, pay-as-you-go burner phone. Julian had always sneered at it. "It's a relic, Ellie. Why don't you let me get you a real one?" But she'd kept it, a secret link to a life she thought she'd left behind. It was dead. The battery. No. No. She looked around frantically. Her eyes landed on Julian's mahogany desk. A charging station. Dozens of ports. She fumbled with the cords, her bleeding hand making it difficult. She found a micro USB, an ancient port for an ancient phone. She plugged it in. The screen lit up. 1% battery. Her fingers, slippery with blood and tears, fumbled on the screen. She didn't go to her contacts. She didn't need to. She knew the number by heart. It was a number that didn't just ring a phone. It rang an alarm. She pressed the digits. It rang once, twice. A voice answered. Not a hello, but a clipped yes. "Alex," she sobbed. The name was a prayer. There was a dead silence on the other end. The line, which she knew was connected to a secure satellite network, seemed to suck all the air from the room. "Ellie?" The voice was cold, sharp, and instantly recognizable. Alexander Sterling, the eldest, the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, the largest and most feared tech conglomerate in the world. "Alex, I'm in trouble," she wept. Another contraction seized her, and she cried out. "Where are you?" His voice changed. The coldness was still there, but it was now weaponized. It was the voice he used when a hostile takeover was imminent. "I've had a trace on this number for 2 years. You're in New York, Park Avenue. Give me the address." "It's Julian's," she gasped, reading the address from an embossed letterhead on the desk. Oh, Alex, he left me. He and his mistress. They hurt me. The baby is coming." "Julian Hayes," Alexander stated. It wasn't a question. "CEO of Hayes Innovations. New money. Highly leveraged. We've been watching him. He's been trying to get a meeting with our acquisitions department for 6 months. Ilara's blood ran cold. He said he had a big deal." "He does." Alexander's voice was ice. "He's been trying to sell his garbage company to me, and he had you the whole time." The fury in his voice was a controlled thermonuclear burn. "Listen to me, Ilara. I'm on my way. I'm calling Sebastian and Damien." "No, Alex, just send an ambulance. I am on my way," he repeated, and the line went dead. Cut to Silicon Valley, 30 minutes earlier. Alexander Sterling sat at the head of a 40-foot black marble table. His board of directors, the most powerful men and women in tech, were silent as he reviewed quarterly projections. His custom-made Tom Ford suit was perfect. His face was emotionless. His private phone, a custom Sterling Dynamics device that no one else in the world owned, vibrated once on the table. He glanced at the caller ID. Unknown. He ignored it. It vibrated again. "Sir," his COO ventured. Alexander held up a hand. The phone vibrated a third time. He frowned. It wasn't an unknown number. It was the number, the one he had flagged 2 years ago, the one his security team had programmed to bypass every protocol, every firewall, every do not disturb setting in his life. Ellie. He stood up, shoving his chair back. The board gasped. Alexander Sterling never left a meeting. "The meeting is over," he said, and answered the call. Cut to the New York Stock Exchange, trading floor. Sebastian Sterling, the middle brother, grinned as the closing bell rang. His hedge fund, Argent Capital, had just successfully cornered the market on a new pharmaceutical, netting his investors $9 billion. He was the wolf of Wall Street, charismatic, lethal, and devastatingly handsome. "Mr. Sterling," a reporter from the Wall Street Journal shouted. "A moment?" Sebastian held up a hand, his smile dazzling, when his own phone buzzed. He checked it. A code-red text from Alexander. Subject, Ellie. Location, Park Ave penthouse. Target, Julian Hayes. Status, hostile. Sebastian's smile didn't fade. It just changed. It became something terrifying. He turned to his head trader. "Call in the markers on Hayes Innovations," he said, his voice a low purr. "All of them. I want his credit lines frozen in the next 10 minutes. I want his stock shorted into oblivion. I want to own his debt, his company, and his future by the time I get uptown. And get the legal team. I want to see fraud charges. Dig. Find it." "Sir?" the trader asked, confused. "Hayes? It's small fry, it's personal," Sebastian said. He cracked his knuckles. "And get my car. The Maybach." Cut to Paris, France, a haute couture fashion show. Damien Sterling, the youngest, the rebel, sat in the front row. He was the CEO of Arthur Holdings, a conglomerate that owned luxury brands, 5-star hotels, and the world's most influential media outlets. He was bored. He was scrolling through designs on his tablet. His phone buzzed, a mass text from Alexander. "Ellie is hurt. Park Avenue. Julian Hayes. Get to the jet. Now." Damien stood up in the middle of the runway finale. The models faltered. The music skipped. Anna Winter herself looked up, annoyed. Damien didn't care. He was already dialing his chief of staff. "Scramble the G700. We're leaving Le Bourget in 20 minutes. I don't care about the flight plan. File it mid-air. Get me a secure link to the NYPD commissioner and the governor of New York. I want a police escort from Teterboro the moment we land." He burst through the doors, his face a mask of cold rage. Someone had hurt his little sister. He was going to burn their world to the ground. Back in the penthouse, Ilara was lying on the Hermes rug, breathing through the pain. Her cheap phone buzzed on the floor. A text from Alexander. "Look out the window." She dragged herself to the massive wall of glass. Her breath fogged the pain. The city glittered below. Then she saw it. To the west, a helicopter, a sleek, black, military-grade Augusta, was cutting through the airspace, heading directly for the building. Its landing lights flashed. To the south, on Park Avenue, all traffic had stopped. A motorcade, led by 2 NYPD outriders, was screaming up the street. A black Maybach SX-80, glittering like an onyx bullet, was at its center. And from the east, the unmistakable roar of a private jet descending at a dangerously fast, priority clearance speed toward the nearby Teterboro airport. Alexander, Sebastian, Damien. They weren't just sending help. They were coming themselves. Just then, she heard the chime of the private elevator. Her heart leaped. Julian. He came back. The doors opened. It was Julian, Chloe, and Meredith. They were laughing. "Oh, thank God," Chloe was saying, kicking off her heels. "That gala was a bore. I cannot wait to—" She stopped. She saw Ilara on the floor by the window. "My God, it's still here!" Meredith Hayes shrieked. "Julian, you said you'd handle this. It's bleeding on the rug. That's a bespoke Hermes." "Ilara, I told you." Julian's voice was full of menace. "You were supposed to be gone." "The baby," Ilara gasped, the pain overwhelming. "It's coming. Julian, please." Julian stared at her, his face contorted in pure, unadulterated rage. He advanced on her. "You think this is a joke? You think you can ruin my life? You worthless—" He raised his hand to strike her. Whoomp! 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 A deafening, percussive sound filled the penthouse, so loud the billion-dollar windows rattled in their frames. Julian stumbled, clutching his ears. "What in God's name is that?" Meredith shrieked. Chloe pointed a trembling finger out the window. "Julian, there's a helicopter on the roof." The elevator chimed again. The atmosphere in the penthouse crackled, the air displaced by the thunderous beat of the Augusta's rotors on the roof. Julian, Chloe, and Meredith stared, frozen at the elevator. They were expecting security, whom Julian had called to remove the trash. The elevator doors slid open with a soft, expensive shing. It wasn't security. The first man to step out was Sebastian Sterling. He was smiling, but it was the baring of teeth, not a show of warmth. He wore a Brioni suit, unbuttoned, and his tie was slightly loosened. He looked like he'd just stepped off the trading floor, which he had. His eyes, a bright, piercing green, scanned the room. They landed on Elara, huddled by the window, and his smile vanished, replaced by a terrifying, cold focus. Behind him, from the stairwell door that led to the roof, stepped Alexander Sterling. He was the opposite of Sebastian. He was utterly still, a figure of absolute, controlled power. His black Tom Ford suit was immaculate. He held a tablet in one hand. His gaze was not on the room, but on his sister. He saw the blood on her hand, the pain on her face, and his expression, already grim, became murderous. "Who the hell are you?" Julian sputtered, trying to regain his footing. "This is a private residence. I'll have you arrested. Security." "Security has been relieved," Sebastian said, his voice a pleasant baritone. He walked further into the room, casually inspecting a bronze statue. "This is awful, by the way. Very tacky." "Julian," Chloe whispered, clutching his arm, her face pale. "Julian, I know them. That's Sebastian Sterling, from Argent Capital, and, oh my God, that's Alexander Sterling." Julian's blood turned to ice water. Alexander Sterling. The Alexander Sterling? The man he'd been trying to sell his company to? The man who held the fate of his entire big deal in his hands? "Mr. Sterling." Julian lurched forward, his entire demeanor shifting from tyrant to bootlicker. "Sir, what an honor. I'm Julian Hayes. I wasn't expecting you. We have a proposal in with your acquisitions team." Alexander didn't even look at him. He walked straight to Elara, shrugging off his $20,000 suit jacket and draping it over her shaking shoulders. He knelt beside her, his expression softening only for her. "Ellie," he said, his voice quiet. "I'm here. The medical team is on the roof. They're coming down now." He gently touched her bleeding hand. His eyes closed for a fraction of a second. "Who did this?" Elara just sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at Chloe. Chloe let out a tiny, terrified squeak. "Sebastian," Alexander said, his voice lethally calm. "On it," Sebastian replied. He was already on his phone. "Yes, get me the commissioner. No, I'll hold. Hello, Commissioner. Sebastian Sterling. I'm at the Park Avenue penthouse of a Mr. Julian Hayes. I need 2 officers sent up here immediately. We have a pregnant woman, my sister, who has been assaulted by— What's your name, darling?" He looked at Chloe, who was shaking her head, backing away. "Chloe Vanderbilt," Julian supplied, stupidly. "Chloe Vanderbilt," Sebastian repeated into the phone. "Yes. Assault, battery, and— let's see. Oh, and I'm sending my legal team the financials for Hayes Innovations. It looks like a classic case of securities fraud, wire fraud, and— what's the fun one? Oh, racketeering. Yes. Thank you. He hung up. You can't do that, Julian shouted, his panic turning to bluster. You can't. This is my company. This is my home. Was your company, Alexander corrected, standing up. He looked at Julian for the first time. The sheer, unadulter gasped. Blinding contempt in that gaze made Julian physically recoil. My acquisitions, team flags, problem founders. You, Mr. Hayes, were flagged as a narcissist with a dangerously high debt-to-asset ratio. I was going to pass on your deal anyway. Your company is worthless. You're lying. Am I? Sebastian purred. Check your accounts. Check your stock price. Oh, wait, you can't. Your credit lines? Frozen? Your corporate accounts? Seized? Pending a fraud investigation? The market you were trying to corner? I own it. You, Mr. Hayes, are a paper millionaire. And I just set the paper on fire. Julian fumbled for his phone, his banking app, access denied, his trading app. His stock, Hayi, was in a free fall, a vertical red line. It was down 98%. He collapsed onto the sofa. No. And you, Meredith Hayes screeched, finding her voice. Who do you think you are, barging in here? Do you know who I am? Meredith Hayes, Alexander said, reading from his tablet. Wife of the late Frank Hayes. Currently sitting on 3 charity boards, all of which are funded by Sterling Dynamics grants. Not for long. He tapped his screen. You're out. And your membership at the Bedford Country Club. My family founded that club. Consider it revoked. Meredith's face went white. This was worse than financial ruin. This was social execution. The elevator chimed again. Everyone tensed. The doors opened. Damien Sterling stood there, flanked by 2 stone-faced security guards. He was dressed in a rumpled, impossibly expensive cashmere tracksuit, having come straight from his private jet. His dark hair was wild, and his eyes were on fire. He was holding an iPad. I'm late. Traffic at Teterboro was hell, he growled. He saw Ilara. Ellie! He rushed to her, but a medical team, 2 men and a woman, in professional polos, pushed past him from the stairwell. Sir, we need to move her, now. Is she okay? Is the baby okay? Damien demanded. She's in active labor, sir, and showing signs of distress. We need to transport. As the medics carefully lifted Ilara onto a portable stretcher, Damien turned his attention to the room. His gaze landed on Chloe, who was trying to hide behind a large potted plant. You, Damien said, walking toward her. He was holding up his iPad. Is this you? On the screen was a crystal-clear, high-definition video. Security footage from the building's internal elevator. It showed Chloe, Julian, and Meredith entering the elevator, laughing. Bleeding on the rug, that's a bespoke Hermes. Meredith's voice, tinny and clear. I'll have security remove you. Julian's voice. How dramatic. Right on cue. You're pathetic. Chloe's voice. But this elevator is private, Chloe stammered. My media division, Ether News, broke the story on this building's shoddy security 2 years ago, Damien said, his voice casual, as if discussing the weather. So, as a public service, my tech division upgraded it for free. I have access to every camera in this building. I have the footage of you, Chloe Vanderbilt, grinding your stiletto into my pregnant sister's hand. He zoomed in on the footage from the living room. It was damning. It was brutal. I own 3 of the largest news networks on the planet, Damien continued, a cruel smile playing on his lips. I also own the largest influencer management agency. You, my dear, are an influencer, aren't you? All those brand deals? That Vanderbilt name you rented? It's all about to go poof. He typed something on his iPad and hit send. Consider yourself blacklisted. By the time my sister is in the ambulance, this video will be on every gossip site from TMZ to Page 6. Every brand you work with will have a link. You're not just cancelled, Chloe. You're radioactive. Chloe Vanderbilt looked at her phone. The notifications were already starting. Thousands of them. Her sponsors. Her agent. Comments full of snakes and poison. She let out a sound, a high-pitched wail of pure despair. "Mr. Hayes," Alexander said, as the medics carried Ilara toward the stairwell exit to the roof. "A word of advice. My brother's legal team is thorough. I'd recommend you find a lawyer, a very, very cheap one, because as of now," he checked his watch, "you are officially bankrupt." "Ilara!" Julian screamed, crawling on his knees. "Ilara, please, tell them it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. I love you. Please!" Ilara was carefully maneuvered onto the gurney. She was pale, sweating, but her eyes were open. She looked at the man she had once loved, the man who had watched and smirked as she was tortured. Her voice was weak, but it cut through the room. "Goodbye, Julian." Alexander put a hand on her shoulder, walking beside the gurney. "Let's go home, Ellie." The three brothers, a phalanx of power and protection, escorted their sister out of the penthouse, leaving behind the ruins of 3 lives. As the heavy stairwell door clicked shut, the only sound was the weeping of Chloe Vanderbilt and the hollow, animalistic sobs of a man who had just lost everything. The world doesn't end with a bang. For Julian Hayes, it ended with a series of quiet, digital clicks. As the thumping of Alexander's helicopter faded into the New York skyline, the penthouse fell into a tomb-like silence. Julian sat, numb, on the floor. Chloe was hyperventilating, her mascara-stained face a grotesque mask. Meredith Hayes was rocking back and forth on a $30,000 armchair, muttering, "The club! They can't! The first physical sign of the new reality came 10 minutes later. The elevator chimed. This time it wasn't a Sterling. It was 2 uniformed NYPD officers. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Vanderbilt?" the taller officer said, his voice bored. He had clearly already been briefed. "We're here about a 911 call regarding an assault." "It was a misunderstanding," Julian yelled, getting to his feet. She fell." "Sir," the officer said, sighing. "We've already seen the video. Ms. Vanderbilt, you're to come with us. You're being brought in for questioning." "Questioning?" Chloe shrieked. "You can't arrest me." "I'm not arresting you, Mom. I'm taking you to the precinct. A team from the district attorney's office is waiting for you." Something about a Mr. Sterling's legal team. As the officers led a protesting, weeping Chloe out of the apartment, the second man, a broad-shouldered gentleman in a sharp black suit, stepped out of the elevator. He wasn't a cop. "Julian Hayes?" he said, checking a tablet. "Who are you?" Julian whispered, his energy gone. "I'm from the bank, the one that holds the note on this penthouse," the man said. "We've just been informed by your primary creditor, Argent Capital, that you have defaulted on every loan you have. Your assets are being frozen and seized as of immediately." "Argent Capital. Sebastian Sterling," Julian mumbled. "Yes, sir. We've been instructed to inform you that you have 10 minutes to gather your personal effects and vacate the premises. The locks will be changed." "10 minutes? This is my home." "According to this," the man said, tapping his tablet. "It's the bank's home, and they've just sold it to a private holding company owned by Mr. Alexander Sterling. He got a very good price for it." The man smiled faintly. 10 minutes, Mr. Hayes." Julian, in a daze, grabbed his wallet, his keys, and his phone. He stumbled out of the elevator and into the marble lobby. The doorman, who had bowed to him that very afternoon, now stared straight through him as if he were a ghost. He walked out onto Park Avenue. His Mercedes was gone. In its place was a tow truck, already pulling away. His phone buzzed, a text from his private banker. "Mr. Hayes, per our emergency clause, your accounts are frozen. A Mr. Sebastian Sterling has purchased your entire debt portfolio. All inquiries must be directed to his office. We are no longer at liberty to discuss your finances. Goodbye." He was broke. Not just New Deal broke. He was penniless. He had less than zero. He had traded his loyal, pregnant wife, a woman who was, it turned out, the key to the entire kingdom, for a sociopath influencer and a pile of debt. He looked up. A news ticker on a building across the street was already flashing. Breaking. Hayes Innovations. High-eye. Holtz trading amid massive fraud allegations. CEO Julian Hayes under investigation. Stock value evaporated. It had taken the Sterling brothers less than an hour to dismantle his entire life. Meanwhile, Chloe Vanderbilt was learning a new, harsher reality. After 4 hours in a stark white interrogation room, she was released. Released was a generous term. Her Vanderbilt name, which she'd paid a distant, impoverished branch of the family to lease, had already been publicly disavowed by the real Vanderbilts. Her agent had sent her a one-line email, "I don't know you." Every brand she was contracted with had sent her a cease and desist, along with a lawsuit for damages to their reputation. The video Damien had released had been viewed 17 million times. The comments were biblical in their condemnation. She walked out of the precinct, her red designer dress now rumpled and stained. A single paparazzo, alerted by one of Damien's media contacts, was waiting. Click. The flashbulb was blinding. "Chloe!" the man yelled. "Is it true you assaulted a pregnant woman? Is it true you're a fraud?" She ran, her broken heel clacking on the pavement. Her phone, which she had finally looked at, was a brick of hatred. Her life was over. She couldn't even get an Uber to accept her credit card. Meredith Hayes found her fate delivered by a simple, cream-colored envelope, hand-delivered to her Connecticut mansion. It was from the Bedford Country Club. "Dear Mrs. Hayes, following a unanimous vote by the Board of Governors, effective immediately, your family's legacy membership has been permanently revoked. Per the club's bylaws, this decision, based on conduct deemed morally reprehensible and damaging to the club's reputation, is final and not subject to appeal. A separate notice regarding the recall of your grants from the Sterling Philanthropic Fund will follow. Sincerely, the Board." She had been surgically, precisely, and silently removed from the only world she had ever cared about. Ilara awoke to the sound of a steady, rhythmic beep. She was not in the cold, cavernous penthouse. She was in a soft bed, in a room that felt safe. The light was gentle, filtering in through drawn blinds. She looked down. Her hand was expertly bandaged. An IV was connected to her arm. "She's awake." Alexander's voice. She turned her head. He was sitting in a chair by her bed, still in his suit, though the tie was gone. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Alex?" she whispered. Her throat was dry. "Hey, Ellie." A rare, small smile touched his lips. "You're at the Sterling wing of New York Presbyterian, the one we fund. You have the best doctors in the world." "The baby," she said, a new panic rising. "My baby is fine," a new voice said. Damien poked his head around the door, his face scrubbed clean of its earlier rage. He looked young, like the big brother she used to build forts with. "A girl, healthy, 7 pounds, 1 ounce. She's in the private nursery. You did good, Ellie. She's a fighter." Tears of pure, unadulterated relief streamed down Ilara's face. "A girl. She's beautiful," Sebastian said, joining them. He was on his phone, as always, but he pocketed it when he saw her. "Looks like you, not a trace of him." Ilara wept, a deep, cleansing sob. Her brothers were here. Her baby was safe. The nightmare was over. "Why, Ellie?" Alexander asked, his voice gentle. "Why did you stay with him? Why didn't you call?" I wanted to be normal," she whispered, shame washings over her. "I wanted someone to love me. Not Ilara Sterling. I thought he did. I was so stupid." "You were not stupid," Alexander said, his voice firm. "You were trusting. He was a parasite, and parasites have been dealt with." "What? What did you do?" "Sebastian?" Alexander deferred. Sebastian smiled, that lethal, charming grin. "Let's see. Mr. Hayes is currently facing a class action lawsuit from his shareholders and a federal investigation from the SEC for securities fraud. He inflated his company's value using, let's call them, creative accounting methods to try and sell it to us. It's highly illegal. He's looking at 10-15 years in a federal white-collar prison. Oh, and he's completely bankrupt. His penthouse, his cars, his accounts, all gone." "And Chloe?" Ilara asked, thinking of the stiletto. "Miss Vanderbilt has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon," Damien chimed in, scrolling through his phone. The video was compelling. Her defense attorney dropped her this morning. She's also being sued for defamation by the actual Vanderbilt family. And as a personal favor, my media division bought her outstanding debts from her various plastic surgeons. She owes us about $300,000. We'll be aggressive in our collection. And the mother, Meredith, Alexander finished, has been removed from society. She has no money, no influence, and no friends. For people like her, it's a fate worse than death. They had, in the span of one night, utterly and completely erased the people who had hurt her. They hadn't just sought revenge, they had sought justice, delivered with the cold, swift precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "It's over, Ellie," Damien said, taking her good hand. "It's all over. You're home." 1 week later, Julian Hayes stood in a drab grey courtroom, his hands cuffed. His expensive suit had been replaced by a cheap, borrowed one that hung off his shoulders. He was awaiting his bail hearing, though he knew it was pointless. He had no money for bail. He looked over at the other defendant's bench. Chloe was there, her blonde hair a mess, her face pale and swollen from crying. She looked at him with pure hatred. "This is your fault," she hissed at him. "My fault?" he shot back. "You're the one who stepped on her. You're the one who brought this down on us." "Order," the judge snapped. The doors to the courtroom opened. A lawyer in a $1,000 suit walked in and handed a file to the district attorney. The DA read it and smiled. "Your Honor," the DA said, "new evidence has been submitted by the Sterling legal team. It appears Mr. Hayes was also engaged in significant tax evasion. The IRS is filing additional charges. We request that bail be denied entirely. He is a flight risk with 0 assets." "Denied!" The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Hayes, you will be remanded into custody." As Julian was led away, he caught a glimpse of a television in the hallway. It was a news report. Ilara Sterling, looking radiant and strong, was walking out of the hospital, holding a baby carrier. Her 3 brothers, Alexander, Sebastian, and Damien, flanked her like a royal guard. They were all smiling. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Ilara Sterling, sister of billionaire. Sterling Brothers welcomes healthy baby girl." He had had it all. He had had the key to a dynasty in his hand, and he had let her scrub his floors. He had tortured her, mocked her, and discarded her. And in doing so, he had signed his own death warrant. He collapsed against the officer, a hollow, broken man. 6 months later, the world was green. Ilara stood on the grand, sun-drenched terrace of the Sterling family's summer estate in the Hamptons. The 20-acre property overlooked the Atlantic, the waves crashing against a private, pristine beach. She held her daughter, Lily, on her hip. Lily, cooing and happy, reached for her mother's sunglasses. "No, my love," Ilara laughed, kissing her forehead. "Those are Mommy's." She was no longer the pale, trembling woman from the penthouse. Her hair, now its natural honey blonde, was cut in a stylish, shoulder-length bob. She wore a simple, elegant white linen dress. She looked healthy, strong, and for the first time in years, truly happy. She looked like a Sterling. Behind her, a mild argument was taking place. "You're holding her wrong, Seb. You're supporting her head like she's a football." "I am not. Dammy, tell him I'm doing it right." "You're both idiots," Alexander said, not looking up from his Financial Times. "Just give her the teething toy, the one shaped like a stock ticker." Ilara turned, smiling at her brothers. They had, in the past 6 months, rearranged their entire lives to be near her. Alexander had moved Sterling Dynamics East Coast headquarters to New York. Sebastian had taken a sabbatical, which meant he only worked 10 hours a day from his laptop on the terrace. And Damien had relocated his entire media division, claiming the light in the Hamptons was better for his creative team. They were doting, overprotective, and slightly terrified uncles. Lily had 3 billionaire CEOs wrapped around her tiny finger. "She needs a change, Uncle Seb," Ilara said, handing Lily over to a clearly relieved Sebastian. "Right, on it. Changing. Baby," he muttered, carrying her inside as if she were a delicate bomb. Ilara sat down next to Alexander. "How's the world, Alex?" "Financially stable," he grunted, "and quiet. Which is good." He folded his paper. "You got the final report from legal?" "I did," Ilara said, her gaze turning to the ocean. Julian Hayes. 10 years. He took a plea deal on the fraud and tax evasion. He'll be out in 6 with good behavior. And Chloe? 2 years for the assault, suspended sentence in exchange for her testimony against Julian, plus a decade of probation. She's ruined, Alex. She's working as a waitress in Ohio, under a different name. Alexander nodded. Good. There was a time when that news would have made Ilara feel something. Vengeful. Sad. Guilty. Now it felt distant, like a story she'd read about someone else. "Are you happy, Ellie?" Alexander asked, his voice unexpectedly soft. She looked at him, her oldest brother, her protector. "I am. But I'm not just happy. I'm me again. I was so lost, Alex. I thought I had to be small to be loved." "You were never small," he said. "You were just hiding your strength. He didn't deserve it." "I know that now," she said. She stood up, brushing off her dress. "In fact, I'm ready to use it." "Oh." "The Ilara and Lily Foundation. I've been working on it with Sebastian's legal team. A shelter and resource center for women and children in abusive situations. Women who don't have 3 billionaire brothers to call. I want to fund it myself. With my trust." Alexander smiled, a real proud smile. "I thought you'd never ask. The board has already approved the matching funds from the main Sterling Foundation. Whatever you put in, we'll triple it." "Thank you, Alex." Damien and Sebastian re-emerged from the house, Lily now clean and draped in a tiny cashmere blanket. "All done," Damien announced proudly. "She is, officially, the most well-dressed baby in New York." "She is the only baby in New York who owns a custom-made Brioni onesie," Sebastian corrected. The 4 of them stood together, looking out at the endless, glittering ocean. The sun was high, the air was warm, and the future was bright. Elara had been to hell, a hell paved with marble floors and designer shoes. She had been broken, humiliated, and discarded by a man who saw her as a liability. But he had forgotten one crucial thing. You never, ever mess with a sterling. She was not Julian's victim. She was not a penniless orphan. She was Elara Sterling, a mother, a survivor, and she was, finally, home. Elara Sterling found her strength, not just in the power of her family name, but in the fierce, unbreakable love for her child and for herself. She transformed her pain into a new purpose, building a future where other women, trapped in their own nightmares, could find a voice, a sanctuary, and a new beginning. Julian and Chloe learned the hard way that true wealth isn't about luxury cars or penthouse views, it's about character. And theirs was bankrupt. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you were on the edge of your seat, if you cheered for Elara, and if you believe in the power of justice, please show your support. Hit that like button, share this video with someone else who loves a story of survival, and most importantly, click subscribe and ring that notification bell. We have new stories coming every week, and you won't want to miss a single one. Thank you for being here.